First of all, thanks to everyone who has watched and commented on what I've now renamed Part 1 of this What Exactly is Atheism video. Some of you seem to really like it, others hate it. I think I made some good points, but even when I was making it I felt it was incomplete. I was also aiming for something under 15 minutes, and it was already over 20 minutes before I whittled it down. Anyhow, I'd like to tie up a few loose ends now. I'm not claiming to be able to provide a definitive description of atheism, and I'm very much aware of the fact that we use language to communicate with each other, and the meanings of words can vary over time as well as from one person to the next. So all I can do is offer my opinion, mainly for the benefit of certain theists who seem to have a very skewed understanding of what atheism is. I'm often accused of hating God. Firstly, I have very little hate in me, and there is none to spare for a being I don't believe even exists. Secondly, this accusation makes it seem like the person making it lacks the ability to imagine a scenario in which there are no gods. Reality, in other words, as it appears to me. Another thing which makes me facepalm is when I'm told that I'm in denial of a specific God because I love to sin so much. No offense, but this seems like primitive thinking. If sinning is lying, cheating on my wife, stealing things and killing people, guess what? I don't do any of that. And I don't need a God to tell me those things are wrong. I already know it. Those things cause harm to others, and causing harm is not something I enjoy. It is something I avoid whenever possible. If sin is disobeying the orders of a God I don't believe is real, when it comes to killing my gay friends by throwing stones at them, then I guess I'm guilty. The same people who tell me I like to sin so much also claim that I want to be my own God. I think this says more about them than me. It seems that every thought they have is filtered through a God lens. If they could only take off the God glasses for a moment, it would help them so much, if only to enable them to understand what we are saying, not what Eric Hovind tells them we're saying. Most believers I've met claim that their God is supernatural, and that's one of the reasons I can't see him. I find that sort of claim unconvincing because I think it's highly likely that there is no such thing as the supernatural or magic. I didn't think I'd need to say this, but atheist is a noun. I am an atheist. Agnostic is an adjective. I am an agnostic atheist. Although I must acknowledge the lack of clarity regarding the usage of words, given the fact that some non-believers in gods, such as Bart Ehrman and Bill Nye, describe themselves as agnostics, presumably to avoid the baggage which certain believers associate with the word atheist. Some people also objected to this diagram, and even seemed to think it was a graph. I would argue that everyone is agnostic. Of course I can't be 100% certain of this, but when people claim to know that there is a God or that they know that no such beings exist, those seem like claims of knowledge to me. People can feel very sure about things and assert their convictions with confidence, but it's still possible for them to be wrong. Now I think I need to clarify why I insist on describing myself as an agnostic atheist rather than simply an atheist. I do hold on to the slim possibility that there might be a god or gods of some description, but I would rule out all supernatural gods. This narrows things down a lot. Almost all god descriptions invoke the supernatural, so I admit it's a tall order to find a credible description of a natural god. People have described the sun and the earth as gods, and even idols, images and statues. But most theists I know don't do that. Some of them, though, do claim that science is a god and that we have faith in it and worship it. This claim seems odd to me. It seems like they are taking the way they relate to religion and applying it to how they think we relate to science, completely missing the point that science and religion are very different things. But if they don't really understand what science is, they cannot tell the difference. Scientific methodology and religious faith are two very different ways of looking at the world. Science studies the world with curiosity and then draws tentative conclusions. Religion assumes that a god or gods are behind the scenes, pulling the strings, and looks at the world for evidence to support this idea. There may well be physical phenomena beyond what we can currently detect, which some might label as supernatural. However, much of what is described by theists is, by their own admission, undetectable in any sort of empirically verifiable way. With such a lack of detectable properties, I can only conclude that the supernatural is not real. I think it's highly unlikely that the sort of God who requires the shedding of blood in order to forgive the beings he created with a design flaw, called sin, even exists. If there is a God, I suspect that very few people, if any, would be able to describe it accurately. I think there are two possible options. One would be a being or species of beings who created us by seeding life on this planet some 3.5 billion years ago, who physically exist or existed at some other location in the universe. But where it or they came from, I would have no idea. The other possibility would be a being or beings who somehow created this universe. This for me is highly speculative and makes the assumption that it actually is possible for there to be some dimension of existence outside of what we call space-time. A lot of theists claim exactly that, but it's a claim for which I've never seen any convincing evidence. Most believers who make such claims seem to have a much lower threshold for determining what constitutes credible evidence than I do. Personal testimonies, such as answered prayers or a feeling in one's heart, don't cut it for me either. Not because I automatically think they're being dishonest, but because I think there are alternative explanations for what they've experienced, such as confirmation bias, coincidence, and the placebo effect. Many believers claim to be certain about things they cannot demonstrate. They don't say, "I believe there is a God." They say, "There is a God." I submit this is a fallacy. Please understand that these are my opinions, and that I offer them as an antidote to the straw men which people like Ray Comfort like to present to the world, not as a doctrine which must be believed, or else you'll be tortured and burned forever. If I wanted to find out about science or atheism, Ray Comfort is probably the last person I'd go to for a lesson. And if I wanted to brush up on theology, I wouldn't go to Richard Dawkins or Thunderfoot. Hopefully that's tied up a few loose ends, but depending on the comments, I may well need to make a third part.